What's up, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kinnahan, and tonight I am bringing you the recap episode for Washington's first preseason matchup against the New England Patriots. It was a 48-18 loss, and yes, you heard that correct, 48-18. The Patriots took the victory in the first preseason game of the season. There's a lot to break down here for Washington. There's a lot that Washington learned, even though it maybe not went the way some fans may have hoped for, but still a lot to learn, a lot to, look at through the first preseason game. This is the first live action for a lot of these rookies, or it really is the first live action games for all of these rookies that Washington has had in the NFL, along with some other new faces that we got to see as well throughout. So we'll start with the game summary, and it started off pretty fast for New England. A 100-yard kick return touchdown for the New England Patriots by Trevion Henderson, their rookie running back out of Ohio State that I know Washington, I think, was interested in drafting as well. I know a lot of Washington fans on Washington Twitter really wanted to draft Trevion Henderson, but Henderson took it to the house, 100 yards, the opening kickoff, and pretty much the Patriots just never looked back from that. They ended up going touchdown on the kickoff, fumble, but then touchdown, field goal, touchdown, punt, touchdown, touchdown, touchdown to finish the game. That is a lot of scoring. They punted twice and they had fumbled once, but beyond that, they scored, or they punted 3 times, but beyond that, they scored every drive, and they scored pretty quickly in a lot of those drives as well. So it got pretty ugly pretty fast. It was pretty much a pretty sloppy game for the Washington Commanders in this one. We'll get into the positives, we'll get into the negatives in a second, but just summarizing, Sam Hartman got the start. He was 9 of 19 for 64 yards and an interception. Josh Johnson then came in with about 2 minutes to go in the first half. He went 15 of 22, 173 yards, a touchdown, and an interception as well. Demetric Felton led the Commanders in rushing, 6 carries for 6 carries for 42 yards for him. Ja'Cory Brooks led the team in receiving, 5 catches on 59 yards. And Carlin Vigors led the team with tackles on the defensive side of the ball, as he had 8 tackles on the night. So going into the night, 30 players did not play in this game. 30 players were inactive for this one for Washington, which, of course, that is pretty much all your starters and all of your starting caliber players. So you got to take that into account here, as the Patriots did play their starters for a couple of drives in this one, both on the offense and defensive side of the ball. So we did see Drake May for a little bit. And we saw, some of these other guys like Ramondre Stevenson, Trevion Henderson, and some of their starting wide receivers as well. But beyond that, still, I mean, losing by 30 in a preseason game, yes, it may not matter in some ways, but in other ways it does. And I can tell you that Dan Quinn is not happy about this one. I can tell you Adam Peters isn't happy. Cliff Kingsbury, Joe Witt, Larry Izzo especially, they're all not happy about this game, even though it is the preseason, and nothing really matters. These players aren't going to be, playing real minutes in the regular season or real snaps in the regular season in a couple of weeks, but it is still, kind of embarrassing to lose in your very first preseason game, give up 48 points. That is pretty bad. I'm just going to say it's pretty bad, but there's still a lot of positives to take away. And of course, we'll get to some of the negative stuff in a little bit, but we'll start with the positive things, because for Washington, yes, you look at the box score, you maybe think, oh, there's not a lot of, great things to take away. But from what I was watching, all of Washington's rookie draft class played. So even though that some of the starters did not play, for example, of course, like Jane Daniels, Marcus Mariota didn't even make the trip, and all of the starting offensive line didn't play. Josh Connolly still played, even though Lattimore and Sainer still didn't play. Trey Amos still played. So all 5 of the Commanders rookies in their draft class played in this one. And for the most part, they all played pretty well. I was impressed with Josh Connolly. I would have to go back and check the all 22 to get a full look, but from the few plays I was watching him on, because again, it's hard to watch all 11 players on the field at the same time, but from the few plays I was keeping an eye on him, he looked pretty solid to me. Again, they'll have to look back at the all 22 for that. But then Trey Amos as well. He seemed untroubled, I think was a word I saw commonly used on Twitter. And I agree. It was, you didn't hear his name a lot, which for a corner is very good. Again, he only played, for the first couple of drives for Washington, but he showed why these coaches love him so much and why there's so much hype around him that the coaching staff and the fan base is kind of given this guy. So the second round pick for Washington in this past draft had a pretty good outing. Same with the first round pick. As far as some of the other guys, we'll get into Kane Madrano, of course, in a little bit. And Jacory Krosky-Merritt is another rookie that I thought had a pretty good day. It may not show it on the stat sheet. He finished 7 carries for 24 yards in this one. But, Washington's offensive line throughout this entire game was just not getting really any movement, any like forward movement on the line of scrimmage. And so it was really hard for these running backs to, find holes and break out for big gains. I know Demetric Felton had a pretty big one where he broke a couple tackles along the way. But for Jacory Krosky-Merritt, it was more so the ability to not have negative plays is what I was looking at. His shiftiness in open space, his jump cut ability, we saw it. I know Ben Standing is pointing out, his one cut at OC, as he wants to call him. So we saw it today, and he's definitely the shiftiest out of any of the running backs that I saw play on the field today, and I would even say in this running back room currently. So he's got fresh legs compared to some of these other veterans like Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler. Neither of them played tonight, but it's still, something that you need in the running back room. You need some fresh legs, and Krosky-Merritt can bring that to this team this season. I definitely think he's the favorite to be that RB3 for Washington to begin this year and, moving forward as well to work his way up the depth chart. But for right now, I think his performance was pretty solid. He was turning 5-yard losses into getting back to the line of scrimmage, or maybe 1-yard gains or 1-yard losses. So it was more so his ability to negate negative plays was something that stood out to me in this one because, the offensive line was not really giving out much help throughout this one. So the Jacory Krosky-Merritt's ability to, just get back to the line of scrimmage was kind of a plus on some plays. So Washington ran for over 100 yards in this one in total. Krosky-Merritt did enter the blue tent at some point in this one. I think they were checking for concussion. Dan Quinn, after the game, said that he's not giving any injury updates. The only injury update that he did give was Luke McCaffrey, who was dealing with a pregame illness. He tried to, tough it out and play in the game, but ultimately went back to the locker room after, I believe, only playing a few snaps. So that was definitely an unfortunate situation for Luke McCaffrey, just because I was really hoping to see him tonight. He was high on my board to keep an eye on throughout this one, just because he's a second-year player. Of course, you guys want to see all the rookies and all of that, but he's just a young player that's playing tonight that, we didn't see a lot of last season that I'm hoping that is able to take that next step here in 2025. But beyond McCaffrey, again, Krosky-Merritt was in concussion protocol. I think he's going to end up being fine, but again, we're going to get an update on Sunday from Dan Quinn after or before practice. I would assume before probably practice on Sunday, which is at 2 p.m. So that is something to note. Ja'Cory Brooks, I want to talk about him out of Louisville. Ja'Cory Brooks, the UDFA wide receiver, looked very good as well. He was talked about a lot in training camp and during the practices. There was a lot of hype around him potentially winning that wide receiver 6 spot that Washington kind of has open right now. Well, on 5 targets, Ja'Cory Brooks catches 5 passes for 59 yards. He looked very good, found a rhythm with Josh Johnson on some drives later on in the game. So, or in that second half, once things were kind of out of it, but still, it was fun to watch Ja'Cory Brooks and Josh Johnson throw around a football. So Brooks had a very solid game. His ability to get open, just find open space in the field was very impressive to me and kind of helped him stand out compared to some of these other, wide receivers like some of the other guys on the back end that are hoping to get, the wide receiver 6 spot. Another wide receiver that stood out to me was Tay Martin, the UDFA out of Oklahoma State, who's one of the more recent signings for this Washington team. He had 3 catches for 36 yards. Early on, when it really seemed like the passing game was just not there with Sam Hartman in that first half, Tay Martin seemed to be a very reliable target for Hartman, and it ended up working out well. So Martin is definitely someone I would keep an eye on. Again, his chances of making the 53-man roster are pretty slim, but he could definitely be competing with Ja'Cory Brooks for most receiving yards this preseason, or leading the team in receiving yards for this preseason. So that is something to keep an eye on. Just those two guys, I feel like, will be the top two for Washington in receiving yards this preseason. Other names that stood out to me, Noah Igbenogany. I thought for the most part he had a great game today, which is good because Amos Igbenogany, and also I'll get into Johnny Newton in a second, but those guys are players who are going to be playing a ton in the regular season. Not pretty much everyone else on that starting defense tonight isn't going to be getting real minutes, or I keep on saying minutes, but you guys know what I mean, snaps in the regular season. You want to see those players that are going to be playing a lot in the regular season show why they don't belong playing in the preseason. Like Trey Amos. Trey Amos played because he was a rookie, but they immediately took him out because he was just too good. He was too good. And Noah Igbenogany, I know he played a little bit more. I believe he played into the second half. But for Washington's secondary, which really struggled tackling, Igbenogany, for the most part, was really good. A lockdown corner for Washington. He gave up one touchdown to Efton Chisholm, I believe, which he missed a tackle there. But beyond that one play, I felt like he had a really good day. He's going to be one of PFF's highest graded players for Washington on the defensive side of the ball tomorrow when those grades come out. But Igbenogany had a very good day today as well. And also just in general, getting these reps for a lot of these younger players, because I'm going to get to the negatives in a second. Oh, sorry, I forgot Johnny Newton. Johnny Newton looked very good. He had the forced fumble on who was it at the time? Drake May, I believe. He had a strip sack on Drake May, which helped out, and put Washington in great field position. Now, ultimately, they didn't end up with any points on that drive, but just getting a turnover early on in the game was huge. And Johnny Newton showing that he is better than the interior offensive line for New England is definitely something you want to see at this stage. So Newton, again, I know some people have him as their, top breakout player for the Washington Commanders this year, and I'm hoping he can be that guy as well and take that next step for Washington. It was a good preseason showing for him. Again, it's just one game and limited snaps for him, but it was a very impressive showing from Johnny Newton, and someone who, again, had flashes last season for Washington. Now you're looking for him, along with a lot of these other 2024 second year players, to take that next step within their careers and be more productive on the field. Johnny Newton will definitely be at the top of the list of players that are going to have to step up and be playing in a higher role, or being playing more and have to step up their production because of it. So yeah, that is Johnny Newton. Other notes, positive wise, before we get to the negatives, like I was mentioning, just the reps for a lot of these younger players, because yes, we saw a lot of these younger players struggle today out there, especially on the defensive side. I mean, really both sides of the ball, really all three sides. Let's just say all three sides. There were some struggles, but it's just getting these reps for these younger players like Dom Hampton, like Kane Madrano, who I don't know how many snaps in the regular season those guys are going to get. Hampton, of course, barely played at all in the regular season last year. So just getting these reps for these guys is huge. And even though they'd struggle, you'd rather have them struggle now in the preseason than being thrown out there in the middle of a regular season game and having these issues arise in games that actually matter. So yes, they got blown out by 30 in this one, but at the end of the day, these reps are good for these younger players, and they still have two more games as well to improve on the performance from tonight, because they better improve on the performance from tonight. But that is pretty much the positives in this one. Josh Johnson, I guess he's also stock up as well, just because he just outplayed Sam Hartman tonight. There's no other way around it. If there's a battle for the quarterback 3 position, Johnson right now is definitely it has a pretty significant lead on Sam Hartman. I would say it was a struggle watching Sam Hartman's offense try and get down the field, and for Johnson, yes, the offense still kind of struggled a little bit, but it just looked more poised and smoother of a game from Josh Johnson, which makes sense because Johnson, again, is a veteran who has played in the preseason a ton and has played for multiple teams, including the Washington Redskins or football team. I think it was Redskins at the time as well. So it makes sense that Johnson, looks more experienced than Hartman because he is. But, you don't know what you have yet in Sam Hartman. He's a young player that, again, you don't know his ceiling. So I get having a competition between him and Johnson here. Who will Washington ultimately end up going with, a veteran or a younger player as the quarterback 3? That is to be determined. But after tonight, Josh Johnson definitely has a huge lead, in my opinion, on that quarterback 3 battle. All right, now let's move on to the negatives. I wanted to start with the positives. Start on the high note. At the end of the day, though, they got crushed. They got crushed, and there are definitely things to work on. We'll start with the penalties. I think that's the first thing that stood out to me throughout this night, just because it was constant, nonstop. And you know how much Dan Quinn hates penalties, and just the coaching staff hates penalties. You looked at the New England team, coached by Mike Vrabel, a first-year coach for the Patriots, but of course has all that experience in Tennessee, and is one of those coaches that is kind of stricter, and he kind of he was a Belichick assistant at a time, so you kind of expect for his team to be more disciplined right out of the gate. And I'm not saying Dan Quinn has an not disciplined team or anything. I'm just saying Vrabel and the way he was taught to coach is different than Dan Quinn. I feel like Dan Quinn is more of a quote unquote players coach in this day and age, while Vrabel is more of that Belichick style military sergeant type. So his team was definitely prepared heading into tonight. They really treated it on the Patriots side of things as like a legit game, preparing. You could tell that they treated it as a legit regular season game. The starters did play, and they played well for New England. Beyond, I think the Drake May strip sack was like their only negative play. But still, on the penalty side of things, 2 for New England, just 2, which is huge. I mean, it's huge. While for Washington, they had 13 penalties. And I believe 8 of those were in the first half. That's just, you cannot do that. Washington led this game in time of possession and yet lost by 30. That is insane. The Commanders led this game in time of possession and lost by 30, which again is a preseason game. Some of this stuff is kind of wonky anyways, but you cannot have 13 penalties in a game. It is unacceptable, and it is rough to see. A lot of it was just procedural. You had illegal shifts. You had 12 men in the huddle, 12 men lined up at one point. You had illegal formations, false starts. A lot of it was procedural stuff, which if I remember right, there was kind of a problem like this last year as well in the preseason. Maybe not to this extent, just because 13 is kind of crazy, but it is definitely something to monitor. You can't have this happen again against the Bengals or against the Ravens, because if this leaks into the regular season, you're not winning games with 13 penalties. Like I mentioned, the Commanders led this game in time of possession and lost by 30. That is insane. And penalties are a big reason because of it. So that is something to monitor. Something that again, I'm not happy. Like if I'm Dan Quinn, not happy about that at all. And so that'll be definitely a emphasis in practice for sure, is those penalties. I know you had the story about Jane Daniels after a false start or a legal shift or something. I think it was a false start. It was Ja'Cory Brooks who had a false start in practice last week, and then Jane Daniels just kind of kicked him off the field because of that false start for that play. And it was brought up about Jane showing leadership, yada yada. But like that is legit. This is why he does that, because you can't be having 13 penalties, and I believe like at least half of those were just on offense. False starts, illegal formations, illegal shifts, all that. Can't be doing that. Cannot be doing that if you're Washington. Other things to note: special teams. Larry Izzo is not a happy guy right now. I'll tell you that, because special teams today was a struggle for Washington. It was pretty bad. I'm trying to find I don't think I can find the kickoff return average, or actually maybe I can, but it was bad. Again, like I mentioned, the Travion Henderson 100-yard kickoff return touchdown to begin the game. Antonio Gibson had a 62-yard return, and some other guy for New England had a 25-yard return. So New England averaged over 62 yards per kickoff return in this one, which is not good. Not good. That means on average they're starting like at the opponent's 40. That is not very good. If you're Washington special teams unit, Henderson and Gibson, both of them broke off a big kickoff returns, which is not good. I mean, like I keep on saying it, but it's true. It's just how it is. You guys, I mean, everyone listening to this podcast knows that you cannot be giving up 62 yards for on kick returns in a real game. I know this is preseason, like I mentioned, but it just seems from right out of the gate the Patriots were ready to go. And I don't know if it was just because it was Tom Brady's statue reveal night or what, but they really seemed locked in this one. So that is definitely also something to look at. And for Washington, on their kicking side of things, Matt Gay missed I forgot how long it was, but Matt Gay missed a field goal as well. It was 49 yards. Matt Gay missed a 49-yard field goal. He made a 37-yard field goal in this one. Apparently, Matt Gay's been struggling in practice recently as well, which you don't love to see. I felt like he's been pretty consistent in practice up until apparently like this last week or so, which is not great. But ultimately, I mean, it's kind of a streaky thing, right? For kickers, kickers are very streaky, and hopefully Washington won't have to bring in some kicker competition to compete with Matt Gay, and because I don't want to go through another kicker competition again and go through 7 kickers or whatever it was like Washington did throughout last season. So hopefully Matt Gay, in practice on Sunday is perfect from the field, and Washington doesn't have to bring in some kicker competition, because that would be pretty bad if Washington would have to do that as well. But yeah, that is another thing that wasn't great. And then just tackling overall. I really just had 3 things: penalties, special teams, and tackling. I didn't even have any players listed. Just things. Tackling, it really looked like this team was trying to carry the ball carrier rather than bring the ball carrier down to the ground, which makes sense because that's what they've been doing in practice over the last 3 weeks, is carrying and, not bringing down the ball carrier, because they're not supposed to do that, because again, they're not trying to be hurt or not trying to get hurt in practice or anything. But you don't bring the ball carrier down in practice so you can bring the ball carrier down in live games like tonight, which again, just kind of is also just takes some getting used to. If you're, the players, especially the younger players, switching from you're being told every day to not, bring the ball carrier down or not touch the quarterback, and now you're like, you just got one day where you're supposed to do everything you're not been supposed to be doing for the last 3 weeks. Again, it's not the coaching staff's fault or anything. It's obvious, like this is how it kind of is. It's just a little weird. If you're a player, kind of just for one day, you're like, all right, now let's, bring players to the ground and everything. So just get some taken used to for these rookies and for these younger players. But overall, yeah, it was pretty bad. The tackling was pretty bad for Washington throughout this game on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively as well, the drops for these wide receivers, I've tweeted it out, but like every time a receiver drops a ball, Terry McLaurin gets richer, because yes, these receivers won't be really playing in the regular season because you've got Terry, Noah, Debo in front of them, along with Jalen Lane, who kind of, disappeared tonight as well, which again, I was really looking forward to seeing Jalen Lane and Luke McCaffrey out there. McCaffrey, I believe he caught a screen pass for like a loss of yards, or maybe for no yards. And Jalen Lane only had 1 target on the night, a couple of punt returns that he only picked up about 5 or so yards. each. So it was not really an impressive night from Jalen Lane. And of course, Luke McCaffrey was dealing with that illness. So it's just kind of an unfortunate situation for him. But for these other wide receivers, the amount of dropped balls that there were insane. They were insane. Gallup only 2 catches on 6 targets. I'll have to look back at the tape again. Osborne 2 catches for 5 targets. So those are 2 veteran wide receivers that are competing for that wide receiver 6 spot. And then you look at Ja'Cory Brooks, who caught all of his targets and led the team in receiving yards tonight. That is huge for Brooks, who is fighting for that final wide receiver 6 spot. It's kind of left the door open for him, seeing some of these, veterans struggle as well. So that's just something to look at and monitor. Again, yeah, it's fun tweeting about, oh, these receivers can't catch without Terry and all that, but ultimately, if Terry ends up signing and playing this season, these guys won't be getting playing time. So that's also something to look at as well. But yeah, that is pretty much everything that went down tonight. Overall, I guess looking ahead here at what's next for Washington, I would expect some higher intensity practices because the Patriots just out intensitied Washington in this one. And that was, at the end of the day, kind of just what happened. I don't know. I'm not blaming coaching or anything on it. It was just kind of, what happened. And Washington in this one, Washington's game plan and Dan Quinn's game plan was a lot different than what Mike Vrabel's game plan was. Vrabel really treated this like a regular game, which makes sense, right? Just because of his coaching background and, just how kind of the Patriots historically have done things. He treated this preseason game like a real game, and the players kind of bought into that. While for Washington, which again, the Patriots also played their starters for a little bit as well. While Washington, on the other hand, it was really focused on these younger players, these players that just have not played in a live game in the NFL in their careers. And those guys were out there starting. Washington's coaching staff and Washington's front office wanted to learn what these players can bring. And yes, it was a tough task going up against the Patriots starting offense, the Patriots starting defense for a little bit. But I guess they learned, right? They learned what they had in some of these players. There's a lot to learn about players like Dom Hampton, players like, Aloy Cajo as well. So there's a lot of guys that Washington can learn from on this defense, especially is what I'm looking at here, just because on the back end, there's a lot of younger players. So that is just something to look at for Dan Quinn, just watching this tape back. And yeah, look at the score. It's 48-18. But again, just getting any live game reps is good for some of these younger players who have yet to get any in the NFL in this stage of their careers at all. But that'll pretty much wrap up today's episode, really, of Keeping Up with the Commanders and recapping here Washington's first preseason game of the year. Maybe it didn't go as, Washington fans really wanted, but it was still fun seeing this Washington team back out on the field after 200 plus days. First time since that NFC Championship game. I guess you could say back-to-back 30-point losses at this point, but it is what it is. And Washington's next matchup will be in 9 days against the Cincinnati Bengals. So it'll be the Bengals on Monday Night Football. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman on the call for that second week of preseason before they then play Baltimore with a joint practice against Baltimore as well in preseason week 3 before a week off and then kicking off the season against the New York Giants at home, I believe, in that one. So that'll be, something to look forward to. We're a month away from that matchup against the New York Giants. A lot to learn in Washington's first preseason game, especially for these younger players. But overall, Washington takes the loss 48-18 against New England. That'll do it for today's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys next one. Peace.